Well, aren't my hormones too strong? Come on, Josh, you've talked about, aren't my hormones too strong to wait? Isn't it unrealistic? Oh, you hear that all the time.
And the truth is you can. Your hormones are very strong, but you can abstain from sexual immorality. I've done it. A lot of other people have done it. And I tell you, it was so worth it, so worth it. I didn't have to walk around, dealing with a lot of those things that other people that were sexually active had to deal with.
There was a woman, you probably don't remember, her name was Dr. Ruth. Up to about 8 years ago, she was real popular in the United States, a lot of countries around the world. She was a little old woman who talked about sex in universities. And she was talking the night before at the University of Cincinnati before I was there. So I didn't go because it had been a commotion if I would have gone. So I had it recorded. She's talking to these university students, question and answer. Said, well, Dr. Ruth, what if you can't wait? Here is this woman, everybody fell at her feet as a Messiah because she said everything they wanted to hear. She said, young man, it's unrealistic to expect you to wait. Your libido is too strong. Now, a lot of people in universities say, oh, well, yeah, sure. Oh, gosh. Do you know how stupid, idiotic that is? Then how can you ever judge somebody for rape? Well, it's unrealistic for them to wait. Their libido is too strong. Do you know what Dr. Ruth was saying? I mean, this is what she was saying then. If a young man comes to her and says, Dr. Ruth, I really like my girl and I want to have sex with her, but she doesn't want to have sex with me. I will guarantee you, Dr. Ruth would say, then you should wait until she's ready. But wait a minute. I thought it was unrealistic to expect a young man. So if the young man comes to Dr. Ruth and says, Dr. Ruth, my hormones are raging. I want to have sex with my girlfriend. She wants to have sex with me. What should I do? Well, young man, it's unrealistic to expect you to wait. Your libido is too strong. So I simply ask, is it unrealistic or isn't it? Is your libido too strong or isn't it? Well, let me tell you, then I wouldn't want my daughter to ever date a guy like that. Well, it's unrealistic to expect him to wait.
When I was in high school, there was a lot of people around me that were very sexually active with each other. That was definitely the thing to do on the weekends. And I chose not to do that. I decided I was going to wait until I got married before I was going to be sexually active. Now, does that mean that just because I made that decision that I didn't have hormones or that my body suddenly didn't have that desire like anybody else? No. In fact, I went on to college and was able to be in a dating relationship. And then eventually I met my future husband. We were in a relationship and had an engagement that lasted for about a year. And I was able to go through all of that without having sex, oral sex, or intercourse because I chose not to.
You young ladies hear me. If it's unrealistic to expect a guy to wait before, it's unrealistic to expect him to wait afterwards. Same way with a woman. Oh, what people think with your minds, not with your pelvis.
I filmed a commercial a few years ago. It was a Fanta soft drink commercial with some unknown name model that most of you may have heard of. Her name was Tyra Banks. And she had just gotten out of high school, and I was a student as well. And we were filming this commercial, and it was a party scene. So all the people in the commercial were dancing with their soft drink commercials. And at one point, the director said, "Cut, everybody take a break on the set." So we started sitting in groups on the floor and huddling up against the wall while they were changing, the sets and the lights. And these girls started talking about their sex lives. Now, I was sitting literally like 2 feet away, and I was not trying to dig in their trail mix. I was not trying to dip in their Kool-Aid. I was minding my own business. And this girl turns around and she says, "So, Lakita, how's your sex life?" And I was so stunned that she would be so forward just to ask me. I'm like, "You don't know me like that to ask me a question like that." And I said, "Excuse me, but I don't have a sex life." So then she said, "Well, tell me about your last sexual experience." And I said, well, I don't have a last sexual experience. So you'd have thought I talked about her mama, because she gasped, okay? Her jaw hit the ground. I mean, she turned around, she was like, she was talking to all of her friends, like, and I'm like, I couldn't believe her response when she turned around. She said, oh my God, I can't believe all the guys you haven't been with, all the things you haven't done. Don't you feel you missed out on anything? And my first thought was, I can't believe she clowned me in front of all these people. And because no one had really confronted me, or, you know, in that manner on a sound stage, which of course, the whole room turned around. It was the longest pause in the time-space continuum. No joke. And I sat there and she kept right on talking. Didn't even break the pattern of her speech. Oh my God. I mean, she kept going on. Don't I feel I'm missing out on anything? And, you know, I sat there and I thought to myself, well, can't lie. And I said, you know what? You're right. I have missed out. I've missed out on the thrill of waking up the next morning wondering if my little early pregnancy test tube was going to turn blue. I said, I'm more distraught that 5 years from now, or actually, no, 3 months from now, I don't get to walk into a clinic with my best friend holding my hand, because chances are your boyfriend's not going to be there with you. Or he will at least drag you in or physically give you money to have an abortion, which is now the most surgically performed procedure in America today. And I get to be like one of my roommates who every year around the same time, she celebrates a child that was never born. And every time it's time to clean the house, we would have to let her know so she could get her books or whatever, go out in the backyard or sit in her car, because every time she heard the sound of a vacuum cleaner, she would break down in tears, because the vacuum cleaner that they use in a section abortion is about 25 times more powerful than your mother's house vacuum cleaner. I said, I'm more distraught that 5 years from now, I don't get to wake up in bed staring at the ceiling of an AIDS hospice, like my cousin Ricky, or a good friend of mine, you know, Rob. Rod thought he was the man, you know. He was out there, he thought that I was wasting my time. He bought into every lie in Truth's clothing. They're gonna do it anyway. Peer pressure is too great. Everybody's doing it. Just practice safe sex. Every lie in Truth's clothing that I now undress, he had bought into. And when Rod withered away to less than 100 pounds, it was not a pretty sight. And you could smell the stench of rotting flesh before you got to his door. And he begged me on his deathbed not to ever stop doing what I'm doing now. And I remember looking over and I thought to myself, you're right. I have missed out on all the wonderful opportunities you missed out on.
An LA billboard. I'm driving down a main highway, a freeway in LA. I look up and here's a billboard that says, if you have to have sex, wear a condom. What do you mean? I've never met anyone in the world, read about anyone in the world that has to have sex. No one's ever died from not having sex. You say it was no different than drinking a glass of water. Well, if you don't drink water, you can die. You don't have sex, won't affect you at all. In fact, you might be better off in many situations. If you have to have sex, use a condom. You all listen to me. I don't know about you, but my 3 daughters and my son, and each one of you here, you're not animals. You're human beings. You know the difference between an animal and a human being? A human being is created in the image of God, with the infinite ability to will, to love, to think, to create, and to make moral choices. The image of God is that ability to relate to a personal God in a personal way. When you give that up, then you are nothing different than an animal. What do you mean, your hormones? Look, sex is a decision. Boy, going to some of these places, I'll even mention Planned Parenthood and others, going there to learn how to say no would be like calling an arsonist to put out a fire. It's dumb. But you know what research shows? Major scientific research. University student, when they talk about your hormones are raging, all the peer pressure, you can't wait. Do you know one thing science has shown, and I'm going to document it in my book, that will overweigh all that? A loving, intimate relationship with your father will totally override your peers and your hormones.
Don't give your future away for a few moments of pleasure. learn self-control and discipline, and enjoy life.
But in reality, having sex before marriage, premarital sex, takes away so much joy from sex in marriage. And I personally, this means a lot to me because I was able to walk into my marriage 7 years ago as a virgin, and I was able to give a gift to my husband saying, I have waited for you. I have not had sex with anybody, and I have waited for you to give you that gift in our marriage. And it's without question one of the best decisions I've ever made. And because of that, my husband and I can have that relationship without the junk that comes from having had experienced that before. When you wait until marriage to be sexually active, you're able to enjoy the fullness of trust, of security. You don't have the burden of guilt. You don't have the comparison to other people.
You need to know that sex is like fire. Fire can be good for certain situations. After all of your cooking, fire is great to cook up your meats and your meals and your food. But fire, if it's out of control, like in a big forest or in a big, or in a house where it doesn't belong, can burn it down or destroy a whole field. And that's where fire is dangerous. It's the same thing with sex. Sex is wonderful within marriage. It's the part that I showed you before that leads to the creation of a baby and a family. Sex outside of marriage, or indiscriminate use of sex, can be like a fire burning out of control, causing great damage. So you need to know yourself and how to use your body properly. Sex in the confines of marriage.